So I think maybe we'll just start up, and we thought today we could do a kind of a reflective session and kind of check in around evolution, a look back, look at our present, and a look forward of where we might want to evolve towards. So we started these monthly sessions during the pandemic, when everybody was trying to figure out how do we lead through disruption. And we had 4 sessions monthly, a month apart, that took the adaptive cycle from nature and used that as a way of looking through and making meaning of what we were experiencing and how we were evolving as we went through the pandemic. And then we had so much fun with that, we decided we'd just keep going. And so we've been going almost 3 years now in these monthly sessions. And I've been doing a lot of thinking recently about how systems evolve. And we are a living system here in this gathering. And as a living system, all living systems evolve unless there's some disruption that cuts that off, right? And we evolve with information and feedback. So we've been kind of dropping interesting information into our group through many different people who have presented and shared. And in the hopes that it would help us individually evolve and maybe make meaning and experiment and maybe apply, bring different ideas into our own practice of leadership or our own understanding. But nature and evolution in nature also is always adjusting to fit form, to function or purpose. And so we've been engaged in this form, and we thought that it would be kind of fun to, just invite people to have some conversations about these monthly gatherings. And is this still the right form? Do we want to grow this form? Do we like where it is? Do we like the organicness? Do we want to be a little more planful and intentional about our topics going forward? Do we want to connect outside of this monthly 1 hour? Do we, those are like all different possibilities. So with that kind of framework, Daniel has some info on how we have just a reminder of the people that we've had and come and shared with us, and also some great questions for us to reflect on. So I'll hand it over to him.
Thank you. Yeah, it was pretty powerful to go through and think about who all we've heard from this year, this last 12 months. Can you all see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So this next slide is just a list of the titles that we used for the last 12 months, knowing that we skipped July. But I put this picture up here. Some of you Nebraskans might recognize Smith Falls. That's my daughter there. And one of the reasons why I am drawn to photos with my children or other people's children in it is because for me, doing this regenerative work really is for generations to come. Last week, I was at the Association of Zoos and Aquariums annual conference in Columbus, Ohio. And I was meeting with a woman who is now the chief conservation officer at the Seattle Aquarium. And she said that she's doing her work, not just on the conservation, but as a woman in leadership in what has traditionally been a very male-dominated profession, so that her daughter doesn't have to face the same barriers and challenges she has had as a woman. Yeah. She's like, it's going to be hard for me. It already has been. It's getting easier, but I don't want to do this. I know that I won't get all of these barriers removed for myself, but I can do it for future generations. So this long-term thinking is really near and dear to my heart. So with that, I want to share with you some of the great topics that we have discussed in the last 12 months. And so as I read through these and you reflect back on which ones you heard, the imagining what they might have been if you missed them, notice if there are any patterns that stand out or things that you get really energized about, topics, because we're going to have a little discussion afterwards. So starting at last month, last month, and working backwards. We had using the EDGE model to help us navigate change. We earlier did building adaptability, resilience, and courage in the face of change, challenge, and opportunity. We heard from Chris with nature-based leadership, notes from the field. We learned about the takeaways from the 2023 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, their summary report. That was earlier this year. Kathy talked about characteristics of resilience and core KPIs that every leader should know. And hold on just a second, because I'm going to name everybody who did these. I didn't get those written down. I didn't have space. So using the EDGE model,
Frank,
thank you.
to read.
Yes. And then Martin was the one who talked about building adaptability, resilience, courage in the face of change. And then we went back further into the end of last year, and we had building the Black ecosystem approach in Canada. And that was the executive director, right, Aman. Yep, thank you. Then we had nature-centric resilience from Amanda Lamont. We had how stories and horses can help transform our lives from, Mary.
Sure, I was involved with Lynn Moore, Lynn Thomas.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, that's fine.
Leadership in Crisis, Lessons from Minneapolis Following the Death of George Floyd from Suzanne Koplinger. Gaining Collective Meaning. That was where I think Kathy facilitated kind of a meaning-making sensing. What are we sensing in the environment? And then kind of going back to September of last year was Accelerating Climate Action. The Inflation Reduction Act had just come out, and I shared some of what was possible from that. So I'll leave this up for a few minutes because I think it might be a helpful reference point for our conversation. But I'm curious what patterns stand out. Or another question you could answer is, which of these did you get excited about or energized about?
I really liked what Aman was sharing in terms of large-scale systems change with Black communities in Canada, because it was just such an interesting mashup between his background in marine biology and how he used that
That's right.
learning of looking at flow and relationships and patterns in marine biology systems, and then applying it to do transformational systems change in Canada to serve Black communities better. That was just such a lovely matchup.
I always found, other than of course the story of horses one, which was amazing. No, the presentations that Daniel would bring about IPCC report and the IRA report, I just really appreciated getting kind of the Cliff Note version of some of these big unwieldy things that allowed and gave me then information to share with people I knew or know. So
kind of in that
go ahead.
In that Cliff Notes vein, I also liked it when Kathy shared the field notes from the leadership conference and kind of told us what was happening in the broader field of leadership too.
That's right.
I realized from this list just how many sessions I've not been able to join, actually, which makes me feel a bit sad and a bit kind of grieving that I know I haven't caught up on the recording, so I'm gonna have to go back and catch up on some of them. It was really nice to see, actually, I didn't come to them, but I'm gonna catch up on the recording, the building the Black ecosystem approach and the lessons from Minneapolis following the death of George Floyd, because I think something I've been trying to focus more on this summer is the lack of BIPOC representation and presence in the regenerative field.
Mm,
And kind of the impact of repeating patterns of white supremacy, colonization. So it's really present for me right now. So seeing those two pop up on this list, yeah, it's like a flag for me. I want to watch all of these, the ones that I've missed, but I think those two jump out for me in particular. And the word resilience, like I popped it in the chat, there's a good few here that are about kind of leadership resilience in the face of change and how to build that capacity.
yeah, there's another subset which is around change. You know, what do we need to change individually in our organizations or networks? You know, some are about building urgency for that change, like the IPCC report, and others are about our the resilience, individual and collective building of resilience, and then some are adaptive, and some are kind of new ideas to apply to help facilitate or accelerate change.
I think the thing that strikes me as I look at these topics is stating the obvious. You know, we're very aware of living in a world, in a universe in crisis, and that crisis is constantly beating us over the head. I think these conversations, these moments once a month to reflect on what are the, as people noted, what are the themes that keep surfacing for us? And obviously resilience and change. I think that's this is a valuable practice in and of itself, whatever the topic is. And I am taking the intent and intentionality of reminding us that stopping to consider what all of this looks like when it's not the continual issue of what is the latest destructive, horror-filled event that's taken place in the world, reproductive rights, all of those issues which we're overwhelmed with, and instead, how do we apply meaning to our work individually and collectively? And where are we going with that? What does it mean to us together? My life has just changed dramatically. I'm a first-term doctoral student, and you know, my world is in daily upheaval right now with all of the new information, new change. But I know that there are certain underlying currents that are always flowing in that same direction, and that's invaluable right now for me. What sustains me?
I would echo that, Mary Ellen, the meaning making, to take a pause once per month and come together with great minds to make meaning of some of the things we're seeing and experiencing, everything from our own personal things that we bring when we get into those small group discussions to some of these big system patterns, and the tools that I've learned. Some of them, sometimes it feels like I'm drinking from a fire hose because I'm learning so much so rapidly from all of you, and then I don't apply it because I get busy. I don't know if that happens to others, but I'll just admit that. But other times there's a nugget that I do apply, or a framework that I start to play with, and it changes how I do my work, or changes how I think. And so I continue to grow from any number of these topics, whether it's an information share, Cliff's Notes, so that you all digested something and can share it out with me, or a framework around nature-based leadership, a resilience model. Those are a few things for me.
I had I did a webinar with a colleague of mine, Sandra Waddock, who has a new book coming out that's not quite out yet, but it's on catalyzing systems change. And she has framed up 3 things that catalysts of systems change do. And they amplify, which is kind of an implementation, learning, reflection, understanding of what's going on, meaning they cohere, they build ways for people to collectively share a vision of what we want to go towards in the future, and co-create an action plan to move forward. And they connect, they kind of see patterns, and they make meaning of what they see. So the connecting, the cohering, and the amplifying. So I always see that this conversation every month is kind of in this connecting, seeing, sense-making kind of category that helps us individually, hopefully, move forward in some way, shape, or form. But I just find it interesting that in her framework, she looks at people who are transformational catalysts, and there's kind of a precursor to that, which is kind of a steward, what they hold together. They have a stewardship of the whole. They enjoy the emergence of new ideas and new ways of thinking and making meaning of the system. There's a connectedness and a relationality to the way they go about their work. So that's the category of transformational catalysts. And then the stewarding change has 2 categories. One is the life-affirming values, like things like purpose, diversity, equitable and just, collective values, stewardship of the whole. And then stewarding change, which is that's towards what end? Towards the just, inclusive, equitable communities and flourishing in nature. And then there's the strategies, the connecting, cohering, and amplifying strategies. And so I think we have variations of this, and that we've kind of organically built out in these calls.
Really strong image just came to me of the kind of dance between being individuals out in our own world, but then being able to come back to this cauldron, for want of a better word. That's the word that came to me. To be able to kind of mix in together and share, and then go out again and then come back in, and that kind of not having been able to come the last few months, I've missed it. And I think there's just value in community, I think, as well, that is in and of itself, it can feel quite lonely. And so to be amongst people who push you and challenge you and stretch you and kind of give you that sandbox to play in with these ideas is really valuable.
Thank you, Shimran. That reminds me of a lot of what I've been thinking about in terms of change, even over the last month. I had to physically sit with a calendar the other day and look at, seriously, you've only been in school for 4 weeks? It seems like years, because there are so many different factors contributing to my thought process change right now. And when I started 4 weeks ago, I looked and thought a lot differently than I do now. And I love the cauldron image. I don't think I don't have these opportunities very often. And I certainly won't for the next 4 years. And it's invaluable.
We're
And
already
it's important.
Oh, go ahead, Marielle.
That's okay.
I was going to say we're already kind of moving in this direction, but I'm curious to maybe put a point on this question of like, what's the most valuable thing that you've received from participating in this regenerative leadership community? Or maybe another way to answer that is like, what is it that gets you most excited about attending these calls? And I heard a little bit about community, the culture, and the dance. Are there other things that you get super excited about or that you gain the most from this community?
The word sparks came to me. It was
Art.
like sparks of connection, sparks of learning, sparks of knowledge, sparks of the light bulb moment and insight. It feels like that kind of, when you connect with other people, you can spark off them. And that's something that I think I definitely feel.
Mm,
That.
It'd be cool.
For me, what I've gotten out of this are the techniques for leadership development, and hearing those and hearing the discussion has given me a higher perspective on what's necessary to use nature-based leadership strategies. Most of my interest in work is leading rural communities, and we've got a lot of challenges in rural communities with being short of leadership capacity. And that's one of the focuses of our community fund here that I help lead, is that we recognize that, and we're working with techniques and tools to enhance the people we have, build confidence, give them more tools, and this has been helpful to me. I'm not a presenter in this forum, but I sure have been a learner and a taker away from it. So any help we can get is I really welcome. But that's why I tune in whenever I can. So just to give you that perspective.
Just want to say as well, Dale, I find your presence so grounding. Like, I live in London in an apartment on the 12th floor, so kind of disconnected from land, and having your perspective, which is so on the front line, is really grounding for me. So you might not be a presenter, but like your presence felt for me.
Well, there's been some great content here, I think, and it's sure been helpful to me. So, and great discussion.
Anyone else want to share what they get out of these calls, out of this community? Recognize, Kate, you're on the phone, and maybe you can share or not. Maybe you're just listening today, but don't, just because you're not on video, don't want to make you feel excluded.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I echo a lot of what other people have said, being inspired, and you know, I haven't made it to calls for quite a while, but I have this image of the people who are meeting monthly, like being this river of power and vitality and life, and it keeps coursing whether I'm there or not. But to be able to show up today and like dip my toe in this river of excitement, of learning, of inspiration, and like I can't read, I'm not watching, but like someone said, I'm so excited to go back and watch some of those videos that I had missed. And I hold some groups, and I'm realizing as I sit here listening that I wish I would have made time in my schedule to come and be guided by a group and held by a group. I don't know that anybody used those words, but it feels, maybe you did, Daniel, like just once a month to pause and sink in and in language and philosophy that isn't, at least in my world, it's not what I'm swimming in day to day. So it feels really, it feels like nourishment.
Wow, that's beautiful, Kate.
Thank you.
I love it too that we can shrink this world and get global perspective. Is it Shimit? Is that
Shimmery. Yeah, shimmery.
Shimrit? For example, my wife's walking partner will be in London and next week, I think, and she's doing a week of hiking, walking, and then spending a week in London. So so you and I are connected by this person that's going to travel from Nebraska, McCook, Nebraska to London. So
I love that.
That's,
Go ahead,
oh,
Mary.
I was just, Daniel, you posed the question that kind of took me right to where I was thinking as well, but it might maybe to riff on that a little bit. You said to this community, and it's like, what is this a community of, or who is this a community of? Based on us here or who we've seen, and I think some of those words are going on right now. But it'd just be interesting. There is a community here, and yet organized around, well, there's some connection to Kathy Allen, perhaps, for starters, but what is the characteristics of this community?
Mm.
I'm curious.
Do you want to answer your own question?
I can offer up a couple words. The characteristic comes to mind is curious. Shimrit, I like that. Thirsty. I think also, what do we want to say? I guess aware of the chaos or the crisis or the concerns that are going on and wanting to take a drink of water. I love some of these, versions that have been come up. But so for some reason, find that this community is a community that can actually support someone who's curious, concerned, cares about things going on beyond my house or my apartment or my backyard. So those are a few characteristics, I guess, that come to my mind, but I would love to hear anybody else's.
I love that. Thank you.
I tend to think that it's the part of our richness is in the varied perspectives and practices that we bring. We all practice in different places, different ways, utilizing different applications depending on, the day of the week, the weather outside, the crisis of the day. And it's very rich to me to hear how those applications look and what does all of that mean, except the bendability of the theories that we discuss, and the reality on a daily basis that none of these theories are cast in stone and held up over a 2,000-year period. They're evolving, they're changing, they're flowing and bending. And that, I think, is probably one of the most substantive and significant characteristics for me.
Thank you.
That's a fun image. I think the other thing that I think about is that we are also kind of something that's being replicated at lots of different levels of scale across the world. And so we're one tiny little node on this vast kind of web-like network of small groups like this that have come together coming out of the pandemic, or maybe because of the pandemic, but they're all over the place. And so, I'm connected to a group in Australia. They call themselves the Catalyst, and they were a bunch of people who were, just like you said, Marianne, curious, thirsty, aware, trying to figure out, making meaning and trying to figure out, okay, who are we becoming? What should we be practicing and applying in our organizations going forward? And I just think there's so many of these same characteristics here in this group are being replicated experiences in England and Germany and the Netherlands and Australia, many different pockets in the US and Canada. So we're part of this invisible network of people that are coming together to experiment and make meaning and play and think differently and apply differently. So it's kind of, it's not something that we talk about very much, it's certainly not something that we see. It's not being reported on the nightly news, but it is something that is happening. And we're part of that invisible structure.
I love that.
Yeah,
So I want to
that's
continue
really
to,
important.
yeah, I want to continue to evolve this conversation. So part of the idea of today is to reflect on what we've seen over the last year, what we're feeling, why we get excited about this, what we get from it. And I think Steph is going to put in the chat some of the key things she heard you all say about what we value. And as you read through that and reflect on that, and maybe we can verbalize a few for Kate, who's on the phone. The next question I want to turn to is looking forward. Given what we've just shared and reflected on and the things we care about, do we want to change anything with how we're gathering, right? Currently, we gather about once a month. The topics are chosen 1 to 2 months ahead of time. We really try to give space for those in this group who have things to share, because as somebody called out, we have a lot of valuable perspectives. So anybody could be a presenter. And we've also invited people who aren't typically joining this group to come in and present and share something. Do we want to just keep doing what we're doing? Do we want to change anything? Be more intentional? A couple of the questions that we thought about ahead of time were, do we want to try to intentionally grow, or is this organic word of mouth? Sometimes people show up, sometimes they don't. We're good with that. Do we want to reach more people? Do we want to connect or have ways to connect outside of this group? Like, really the open question is, given what we just reflected on, is there anything you want to change going forward? Are you very happy with this kind of monthly cadence? Topics are generated very organically 1 to 2 months ahead of time. And just honoring that Kate is driving and not reading, hopefully I'll just share a couple highlights that Steph put in the notes of what she heard people value. Sparks of connecting, knowledge and learning, techniques for leadership, this higher perspective of what's necessary to use with nature-based leadership, different perspectives connecting with the group, global perspectives on how applications look, river of power and vitality that keeps coursing whether I'm there or not, being able to dip my toe into the river of excitement, being held by a group to sink into a language and philosophy that's not what I'm swimming in every day, feels like nourishment, catalyzing systems change, the characteristics of this community: curious, thirsty, aware. And Kathy said this invisible network. We're part of this invisible network, or Shamreed, I think, said fractals. We're like fractals across the globe. That's pretty awesome stuff. So do we want to change anything going forward? Are we good with where we're at? It's just good to ask that question occasionally as a living system.
Something that popped into my mind a little bit is there have been times where I've wanted to encourage and invite people to attend, and people are busy, and it's hard to explain a little bit of what it is or what it ain't, so we brought this up when we did the horses, the framework that we use at the horse piece, but kind of opposites. So there would be a flip to this, is what do we not want this to be, or to sort of because of such strength of what it is. But if that even helps. But it is a little bit of a challenge to describe what it is. Maybe not after today, because we've had some marvelous language, but you know, in these, I guess, maybe what I don't want to expect, and yet there are some people who I would love to have on this calls to gain these views, who are going to say, what is this? It's too loosey-goosey, hoogity boogity. You know, I mean, there's what tools am I going to get? How am I going to dot the I's and cross the T's in what I worry about? Yeah, anyway, and so there's a little bit of wonderment about if, and this thing can't be everything to everybody, so that's of course fine too, but
So
yeah.
I think I just heard you name attention, right?
Yeah.
Acknowledging that this is very organic, it is looser.
Yep.
There are people in the world who aren't attracted to that model. They really want to know, what's the agenda, what's the outcome, what am I going to gain, what's my takeaway, especially like business world, professional development. If I'm going to spend time or money on something, what is my employee going to get from this, or what am I going to get from this? And that the tension that I heard you say is like, you know, people that might be more like that you really wish would come, but we don't have that level of structure
Yeah.
and a common way to communicate about what this group is. Is that right?
Thank you. Much better said than I conveyed, but no, yeah.
Oh,
in a
you said it
nutshell,
perfectly.
yeah, in a nutshell, that's that tension there. And you know, maybe it's those not late adopters to come into these conversations, but maybe these people who, oh, you know, they would have a chance to be here and start to experience more and gain all these kinds of things we gain, that maybe they may not think about attending something like this unless somebody recruited them very actively. So it's, thank you.
Just to support that point, I have invited others to get involved with this too, and without success. So I don't know what,
Yeah.
you know, what that says.
I wonder that, sorry, go on.
I'm just throwing out that maybe that's okay. I think we've all experienced a great deal of structured, well-planned, thought out, agenda-filled meetings. And there certainly is time, place, space. But I also think there should be time for the serendipitous synchronicity that often occurs in these sessions, and enjoy it and respect it for what it is, because I would tend to guess there's fewer of these than there are of the well thought out, well planned out agenda, topical area sessions, who, as Daniel pointed out, the boss wants to know what you're doing in that last meeting. And there are times when, sincerely, I have gone back and looked at the recordings from the meetings and said, I completely missed that, or wow, that's really valuable for me at this point to understand X. So I'm not really defending either one. I think there's a genuine opportunity in place for both. I'm very comfortable with the fluidity that occurs. It's kind of like a paramecium. I think those were the ones I remember from biology. The form and the shape moves, and the little cilia that come out of the sides of those guys contribute to the way that shape changes. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Can
I
I
think
just say,
we-
Mary Ellen, that I just want to say serendipitous synchronicity is my takeaway, my words of the day today. That was marvelous. Thank you.
gonna say, just picking up Kate's River, I think if you're someone who has met the river before and waded in it, it's really easy just to like skip a few sessions and then come to another one. You know the river. If you don't know it, you kind of want the source first. You know, you mentioned those 4 sessions you had right at the beginning that were the adaptive cycle, kind of ground you in what we're doing. And it's kind of that balance between keeping the river flowing and are there people who are interested. And so I wonder if there's also maybe an annual cycle of revisiting the adaptive cycle, which can potentially be a point at which new people can come in if they want and get a grounding. And then we continue with, not saying you have 4 months of the adaptive cycle, but maybe 1 session at the beginning. Like now we're going into autumn in the Northern Hemisphere. So maybe it's that, maybe it's a grounding source of the river session, which is about the adaptive cycle, some of the principles where new people can come in, and then you continue with the river, which is organic and flowing, and you can dip in and out. So that might be a way of balancing both.
Fun.
To your point, where can I find the recordings? Because I've not went on.
Thank you.
for
I
them.
asked that. Yep.
I'll put it in the chat.
And I think that's something if they're shareable, I think that's something you can share
Absolutely.
with an
Yep.
invitation. Pick out one that you think your invitee might be interested in and say, hey, just take a look at this and see if you'd want to be more involved with this.
Let me just do a share. So this is just on my website, kathyallen.net/theconversation. And then this is where all of
Okay.
them are posted.
Fantastic.
And if you click on view all sessions, Kathy, it goes into a nice kind of grid that has a brief summary in the title, and you can
Cool.
scroll down and find past ones more easily.
Thank you.
Where is the adaptive cycle sessions? Because I've tried to find that a couple of times and I've never found them.
Those would be like March 2020.
Okay.
Yeah, I think actually we didn't post them on here, and I'll
No,
make sure we
I
do
don't
that.
think so.
I will make sure we get those 4 initial sessions posted.
Yeah.
I know we
Yeah, those
reviewed,
aren't showing up.
but there is an adaptive cycle one in there that you can check, but not the original kind of 4 that we put together.
I do appreciate the format of once a month for an hour, 15 to 20 minutes of information presented, and then 30 to 40 minutes of free discussion about that, either as a group like we have today with a smaller group, or in chat rooms, or what. I mean, we split it up into the different rooms, and that I appreciate that. Oh, I know what I was going to ask, and this is to the presenters. How are we doing on ideas for content, and how are we burdening the presenters with this format, or is there just you have lots of more great ideas to share?
I had a follow-on. I had a similar, related question, which is if it's organic, and I don't know if you're relying on your network, I don't know how you source the ideas, but what are we not seeing?
Right.
And what are we maybe missing?
Opposite, yeah. What are we not seeing?
A great question.
So
I
going
think-
back to, the
Go-
idea of diversity and maybe the global south and some of those voices that we're maybe not hearing, or that came through in some of those other sessions. Yeah.
Yeah, you named it, right? It very much is the existing networks of so typically it's Chris, Kathy, Steph, and Marianne and I have now we hop on the call 30 minutes ahead of time usually, and figure out what we're going to talk about for the discussion questions, but we usually know a month ahead of time what the topic is. And sometimes it's something we've read, or an inspiring video, or something we've come across, and at other times it's people we know. We really try to tap into you all as participants, because you each have something, and many of you have presented, not everybody, and that's okay. It's no pressure. But because we're working with existing networks, there are limits to that. There are things that we are missing. So did I hear an unspoken request of becoming a little bit more intentional and a little less organic to ensure that we're bringing voices that we've historically missed?
I guess it's balance, right? Flow into the network and then also venture a little bit further sometimes, maybe.
Adjacent possibles.
It's a little bit like, yeah, who are we as who are we? Have we been as a community? And then what are we? Yeah, where are we in a gap, if at all? I don't know, but
Marie, would you ever consider doing 3 more concepts from your book?
Yeah, I know you emailed me and yeah, absolutely. It's funny because the book feels old to me now. And I've like learned so much since.
Wow.
But yeah, absolutely.
Would you be interested in doing that maybe in October?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the session would be on the 17th.
So the 17th is my birthday and I won't be joining on the 17th.
So not October.
October. So maybe November.
Yeah, great. Okay. I've been doing some thinking. The 21st is the November date. So we could maybe pencil you in. That would be great.
I will double check my diary, but I think
so I've been playing with a new experiment on what is the conceptual roadmap that helps people change the way they think and evolve the way they think. That might be a topic. Laura Storm, who's a co-author of this book, Regenerative Leadership with
I
Giles.
just picked that one up.
I did her leadership journey last year.
Did you? Cool.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that
you
I
recommend?
know her now, and I was thinking she might be fun to come and talk about what they're doing in that regenerative leadership journey.
I missed it because I couldn't go, but they just had a 4-day retreat in the UK, which I couldn't make. But it was really interesting. So it could be some lessons from that as well.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And this woman that I met at this writing retreat, Zoe, I can't remember her last name, but she's part of a group that has put together a new framework for sustainability leadership for the University of Cambridge, for the Sustainability Institute at Cambridge. And I bet she'd be willing to come and share some things. So those are some thoughts of what we could do going forward. Daniel, you have anything on your agenda that you're playing with that you might want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I go blank when I put on the spot, but throughout the month, I'm like, oh, this would be a good topic. That would be a good topic. One of the recent things is I was in a 2-day workshop a couple weeks ago, bringing the conversation of conservation and sustainability together. That's a fascinating conversation that maybe is a little bit more relevant to people in the conservation space, because there are folks who think conservation is preserving ecosystems and they don't see the sustainability connection very directly, like their Venn diagram barely touches. And then there's other people who think it's almost all the same thing.
Yeah.
And I would want to bring somebody else from that space to maybe have a dialogue or co-present, or even just present without me. That's one. I've also been playing with, I picked up that book that you held up, the Regenerative Leadership book, and the kind of core book from Project Drawdown about regeneration with Paul Hawken. So I've been playing with the idea of subsets of regenerative practice in our work. And one of the things I keep coming across is people think it's too ambiguous, it's too loosey-goosey. And it's also not. Like my team said, what is all this regenerative stuff you do? And how do we teach our partners how to do it? And I said, it's not necessarily a list of practices. It's more about how you think. Yeah, for those left-brained thinkers, doesn't work. They want what are the steps to become regenerative?
Yeah.
So I would love to play with, how do we communicate what regenerative leadership is or regenerative practices are? And I'm sure there's a number of people who could talk about that, or we could also kind of use our own words and co-create how we describe it when we're telling people what is regenerative leadership concretely. What does that mean? And then the last idea I'll share out is, we're doing a lot with this concept called Brave New Work, which I may have shared about. It feels like it's based a lot with living systems, but it's written by a business person. And so he uses a lot more businessy language. So that is a more concrete way that folks that I swim with can relate. But in that regard, like the how to, I don't even know how to articulate this, how to navigate the way that I see the world is so connected, shades of gray, probably very similar to how all you see the world, with folks who see the world more black and white. And part of this is coming up because I received a good 360 review, and it's interesting to see how other people perceive me, and using words that I never would have used to describe me that were somewhat startling. I'm like, that's not how I intend to show up, but clearly the impact of how I'm showing up is that. And just navigating that tension between, how do you get clear enough and structured, but also recognize that the world isn't black and white, that we're all human beings learning and growing together, that this is an evolutionary process. So I don't know what the topic of that is, but it's been something that's been on my mind a lot, because I'm facing it personally, like, this person perceives me this way, which is not at all how I perceive myself. And most of the people who know me well don't perceive me this way. But what's the level of ambiguity that people are comfortable with?
Really interesting, because all through the regenerative leadership thing with Laura Storm last year, there were people desperate for structure and answers, and just tell me what to do and give me the checklist. And Laura kept challenging us back and being like, there isn't one. This is the unlearning that we have to do. And I almost feel like regenerative practice is, we're all really well trained in how to be rational, and this is rebalancing the heart and the kind of soul alongside the rationality, not to replace it, but to be in balance. And I feel like people who say they're left brain have that playful capacity. It's just kind of, or that imaginative capacity, or that heart capacity. I don't even know what I'm saying right now, I'm rambling, but it doesn't always feel like they can be brave to bring it into a workspace. I don't know. There's like, yeah, it's kind of how I see it at the moment. But yeah, it's like I keep coming up against it as well.
You know, along these lines a little bit, and maybe Dale, with what you talked about, what you bump into or what I've bumped into in my past work with extension in the public sector, you know, it'd be interesting, because I'm not sure positional leaders know or can be safe in public settings saying there isn't a black and white answer here, or we got to figure it out together, because there's a general public thing that said, or a self thing, I'm the leader, so I'm supposed to know, and we can't know, you know. So it'd be interesting if we know a positional leader or two, elected leader or whatever, who could get on a call and talk about the challenges they face, and or how to talk about this, or how to learn about this, and in a way, and how to communicate. It goes back a little bit to what you said, Daniel, how to communicate confidence and competence as a leader in a setting that it requires a village to get through all of this. I don't know. It's just that perspective might be an interesting.
Maybe October should be this conversation about coming up with what our collective definition of regenerative leadership might be, and just see what people are playing with or thinking about, just as a possibility.
I mean, that would be very valuable to me, because I'm trying to describe it all the time, but I don't want to do that if it's not intriguing or valuable to others.
I think that it could be seriously fun myself, but Kate, I just want to invite you back in before we kind of scoot off the phone. Is there anything that you want to add at this point?
I only want to share my disappointment that I'll be on a college tour on October 17th, but I will watch the video.
That is one thing that having everything on video is doing for us, is we have regular people across the world that are downloading our videos. So even though they're not on the call, they're still benefiting from dipping their toe into the river. So thanks for that metaphor, Kate.
Sure thing.
Marie, thank you for posting what you said on the chat there. I'll make a note on the notes about that.
I'll try and find it. I just for Kate, as you were talking about the public sector, Marianne, there's a woman based in the UK called Phoebe Tickell who works with the idea of collective imagination. I went to a fascinating talk where she's been working with a local government not far from where I live, actually, a local council, to bring in the idea of imagination practice and to be like, what if we as a public sector institution approached our work with the view of yes and, instead of no, we can't do it, we haven't got the budget, we can't do this. And there's been some really exciting early results. So I just need to find the report and I'll share it here if I can, or afterwards by email. So yeah,
That's great. Thank you.
Love that.
Cool. And just as a little FYI, I've written about my next series of blogs starting in October. It's going to all be focused around regenerative topics. You know, what do regenerative systems look like? What are different takes on them? So that'll take. So I've written 11 blogs on that topic. I still have about 4 more to go. But I've been playing with that same space. But I think it could be really fun to have a conversation here in October. So.
I would love that. I'll make a note that I won't be here on the 17th. My team has a retreat that day, so I'll miss out on that lively conversation.
Or maybe we do something else and do it when you can be here. I don't know.
I would love to be part of that one because it's something that's a tension point for me right now.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
We'll figure out October. And Shamrit, I'm glad you're going to do November, because even though the book might feel old to you, I still it's a very beautiful book that helps stimulate thinking. Maybe I'll do the conceptual roadmap, which I actually experimented with in Nebraska, in the community, the Nebraska.
I have to head out. Good to see you all.
So
Bye,
we'll play with topics, and we'll see you in November or October 17th if you are available.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Super.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Kate.
Ka-
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody. Take care.
Kathy, don't hang up.
Great
Kathy,
week.
Okay.
I have one question. Bye.
right.
Good to see you guys.
and Kathy, I would love that coffee at some point if you are free and when you are free, just to catch up.
Yes, we had talked about this Thursday, maybe. Right?
Oh, maybe. I think I'm free.
I think I'm free in the morning. My morning, your afternoon.
Yeah, sorry, give me a quick. Yeah, I'm around.
So maybe 9 or 10, somewhere in there, my time, which would be
Let me make a note.
6 hours later for you.
Yeah, I'll work it out.
All right, I'll send you a Zoom.
Yeah.
Kathy, one other suggestion that I thought of with your blogs. I mean, you have these wonderful topics and write-ups. If you were just to take one of those and riff on that, you know, to bring the blog come to life with the author.
Oh, I love
and
that.
Talk a little bit more about the backstage of what informed your blog, etc. Could be
Super.
an audio visual.
Oh, I love that. That we could do that in October.
Yeah. And then my last thought I wanted to just share, and I'm glad you're on, Dale, too, is when we get some intergenerationalness with our group, but I think if we could target, the view of the world from the youth, I mean, truly, teenagers or in college age or whatever, or get some of these younger activists, or whoever, just kind of get some perspective and of age diversity might be an interesting topic. Some young
That's a great idea, Marianne.
leaders, I'll just put it on the list here.
Cool.
Okay, anyway,
Great.
that was my thought. Thanks, you guys.
Always great to see you. Take care.
Yeah,
Yes.
take care.
Bye.